So the theme today is all about our best friend in the band. So the theme today, our best friend in the band is who? The bass
Bass.
player. Yeah, the bass player, right? And I've been lucky to play with some, yeah, really cool bass players over time. And really, you want to always, yeah, just like honor the bass player, have a link with the bass player, and just make them smile. And today's session is like how do we do that? And what's the best ways to just have like kind of a link and a bond with the bass player, and maybe some things to do that would upset them. So we don't want to upset them. And there's a part in the, yeah, that's like, we don't want an angry bass player. Let's make that the mission of today, right? And there's a part in the LTR drumming method in the book where it's called 2O, the two objectives. And the two objectives really is like make the band trust you. That was really imparted on me by some of my mentors, and it's such good advice. Like if the band and especially the bass player like trusts you, you have ultimate freedom to really do anything. So really that's like my North Star. Like let them just trust you, and think like how do you gain that trust? That's kind of it. But again, once they trust you, you think of a drummer like Steve Gadd. Like he just has that trust. It's his reputation and his body of work. So when a bass player, just any musician plays with him, it's like cool. Like I don't have to worry. He's got it. Now there's another part in the book called the 4 offenses of drummers. And I came up with this because I just did this, I was asked to do this masterclass once, and it wasn't just to drummers, it was like to all musicians. And the keyboard players, the singers, the guitarists, the bass players, they were all telling me things like, hey, when drummers do this, it really, really annoys us. Can you make sure to cover this? And it just came up. And I'm like, wow. Then I thought of every like bad experience I've had in a band where I've like almost been fired, and you just learn by doing things the hard way sometimes. Like, oh, that was really dumb, I shouldn't have done that. You're young, you're inexperienced. How do you gain wisdom? You just make mistakes and you go, oh, okay, don't do that again. You learn like the hard way, right? So what does everybody think those 4 offenses are? So put yourself in the place of a bass player or a keyboard player, a singer even. What would be like an offense that would get you fired? Anybody throw out an idea? And there's 4 of them.
Well, I'd be thinking like overplaying,
Mm-hmm.
playing over somebody's solo.
So space is the first one. So they never leave space. So we're going to play to some bass tracks today and come up with parts and stuff. Oh my gosh, if you're never leaving space, that's not good. It's like, music is the space between the notes.
Right.
So never leave space. What the heck are you doing? And really it's like editing. Like I was with a drummer the other day, and they had a recording of them playing something in like 2012, and we kind of listened to it for a second, and she was happy with it. Her name is Anne Marie. She was like, yeah, I've got the basics, and the groove felt good, but she's like, if I could do it again, I think I'd play a little less. Now that she's had over 10 years experience since then, she's like, yeah, I think I just edit what I'm doing. And most drummers, as they play, like we mentioned Steve Gadd, you look at a young Steve Gadd and a Steve Gadd with more experience, he's going to play a little more choosy about the notes. So that's excellent. Space. Good job.
I was told by somebody that perfection is not when you
Our
can't
best friend in the band.
take away.
Sorry, Tom, say that again. I just had an echo there.
I was told that perfection is not when you can't add more, but when you can no longer take away.
Oh, I love that. And I'll even add to that, my mantra sometimes is take away so much that you actually have to add a little back.
Oh.
Then you're in the right realm. So if I'm playing to Like we'll even play to some bass lines today. If I'm playing to a bass line, I'm like, how much could I delete? And then like, all right, it's probably a little too much. Let me add some back in. That's a good place to be in. Versus like everybody's like, shut up, you're playing. You're overdoing it. You don't want to be in that space. So Karima, I know you mentioned next year you're going to be playing with some musicians. That's a good, just leave them space, let them shine,
I'm
right?
like really nervous, but
Hey, that's okay. That means you're stretching yourself,
the
right?
thing is, I don't know how to play with the band, so
You're here to learn, and knowing what not to do is a good start, right? So, okay, so space, I want to throw out some ideas. So there's three more offenses of drummers. Put yourself in the position of the other people that have to endure all the power, this is a powerful force of drums. We're creating a wall of sound.
Dynamic.
Fantastic dynamics. So many drummers don't play with dynamics. And even a loud band like AC/DC say, they're playing with dynamics. I think of it like a wave.
Yeah.
Okay, the verse comes, maybe you pull back just a little bit. Chorus is here, it's big, maybe pull back a little bit. Oh, this is the third chorus. It's the most intense chorus. It's a little up. Dynamics like a wave. Nothing is more boring than just easy trap to fall into on the drums. Loud, loud, and louder still. Right? What's the Motorhead saying? It's like louder than everything else, or something like that. I love that.
I don't know if less is more, then too much must be just enough.
Right. Yeah. Outstanding. So dynamics, space, any others?
Well, nobody else is going to go. I'm gonna say meter.
Yeah, very good. Outstanding. So time, right? So I know for myself, I tend to go ahead of the beat. And Karima, you mentioned like, oh, I'm going to be nervous. You may play fast or faster, and that's just know your tendency. I've seen people do the opposite. They actually get overwhelmed and they kind of drag.
actually, I can't say I
Yeah.
haven't played with the band, but I have done. I actually have now that like this was way back, and I did end up going faster. But because the guitar player got nervous and then she lost her voice, and then I was like, I just ended up playing fast, trying to get through it, I think, or something. But I do tend to do that, play a little bit faster than.
I think most people do. I know I've got an app, by the way, if anybody wants a cool app, I got it right here. It's called Live BPM. And I think it's like $3 or something, Live BPM. And what it does is you put it on and you just play anything and it shows you your tempo. So sometimes if I'm in a rehearsal and I'm like, oh, this is a new song, I know the tempo is say 90. I need to get used to this feeling. So I'll just put it on my music stand and just play, but I can glance at it and, oh, okay, 92. Okay, just like lean back a little bit. Oh, 88. Okay, push it up a little bit. But I kind of know that when performance comes, I'm going to be on the 93, 94 side. I just know I've put it on and glance at it or measured a recording of a show. And I'm like, oh yeah, 3 to 4 BPM, because we get excited, right? So laying it back. But Tom, I know you were talking about you got to play in some big bands, right?
Yeah, community big band.
Yeah.
18 pieces or something.
That's awesome. So that's kind of a lost art. Think of the big bands, the horn section, and there's 30 people in those bands, right?
Yeah.
The opportunity to do that in present day is pretty rare, right? Unless you're in like a school, or it's just not really done anymore. And even past the 50s, once amplification happened, it was kind of like, wow, it's really expensive to keep 40 people.
There's only a handful of big bands around anymore. Tommy Rose, Maynard Ferguson, and 2 or 3 more. That's it. And big band used to be, that was every band was big band. I mean,
I was yeah.
falling all over them.
Exactly. And even I read like Buddy Rich had to like fight to keep, he's like, this is my thing. Like, I want to keep this forever. And he just economically, and that was a real challenge, right? So I got one opportunity to play in a big band, and I just wanted the experience, because big bands rehearse a lot because there's so many people. And this drummer was like, had a cold or something, and he's like, hey man, can you rehearse like one day, Monday night? And I'm like, great, wow, I'll get the opportunity to play the big band. Like, never done that before. That'll be cool. I took the subway home from that experience with like my head in my hands. I'm like, why do I even play drums at all? Like, I'm a failure. Like, it was so painful. It was awful. Yeah. So you got to bounce back up from being punched in the jaw of, because that was so painful. But I wanted to get out of my comfort zone, and I wanted to feel what that was like. And just, I get there, and they got this like folder of this thick folder of charts, and it was supposed to be alphabetical order, but it really wasn't. And the band leader's like, all right, take the A train or whatever. And I'm like, okay, it's supposed to be in the A's. It's not. And, I find it and I put it on the stand. He's like, 1, 2. And I'm like, okay, I'm kind of sight reading. And I'm watching the band and stuff. And the bass player was doing this, I remember, stomping his knee. And I'm like, kind of trying to read, but I'm just trying to survive. And I'm like, what's he doing? Like, it just looked like he was having a seizure or something. And what he was doing was he was telling me like, speed up, man. Like, you're dragging, like push.
Yeah.
And there's two impediments for that. Number one, I was super nervous and out of my comfort zone. I'm like, whoa, I've never done this before. Number two, I'm just having to read these arrangements, and I'm not really used, like, I can read, but it's a real art to, like, Tom, if you've done it, you got that chart up and where the hits, and it's an art form on its own. And the third thing was, what I didn't know was sound travels in the room, and the speed of sound is a thing. And so it can trick your ear as a drummer. It's different than like an electric 3 or 4 piece band. Just the sound, I didn't know this until I experienced it, but I've heard people since talk about it. You have to like kind of ignore it in a way, and just take charge of the time, and just cut through the time, and just push the band, because the sound tricks your ear to like it almost sounds like you're not quite in time, or you want to follow them, and you don't want to do that. Yeah. They need to follow you. And that's what that bass player was doing. He's like, come on, man, take charge of the time. And I was like, and I was so overwhelmed that I was dragging. And it was not fun. And it was, but it was a good experience, because now if I were to do that today, I'm like, okay, I might not nail this chart in terms of the reading, but I'm going to take charge of that time. I'm just going to like cut through the band. And I know my tendency is to drag. So that covers space, time, dynamics. What do you think the fourth one is? Listening.
Oh, okay. I was going to say looking at them,
Yeah, good. You're close. Right. Like, just being aware, right? So
the worst guy is the one that's playing like this.
Right. By the way, I tend to close my eyes sometimes when I play. I get in a zone, and I don't know, it shuts off my audio cortex or whatever, and I can like get into the flow state or whatever. And I always video my shows, and I've seen like the bass player try to get my attention, like, and I'm just eyes shut, and I'm like, and then he walks away, he just gives up, and I'm like, oh my God, I didn't even see him. He was trying to get my attention. So that would be, like maybe awareness would be even a better term, like just be aware of your surroundings, right? So that's the 4 offenses. So time, space, dynamics, and listening. So there you go, Karima. When you're playing with people, and especially the bass player, just like, you just kept it real simple, but you're like listening, you're focused on your time, you're breathing, you're leaving space, and you're playing with dynamics, like, you've already won 99%.
Well,
of the battle right there.
when I've been practicing those songs and I've actually been closing my eyes, I feel like I can play better when I just,
Me too.
but I'm like, oh, I gotta keep my eyes open. Like,
Just choose your moments.
yeah.
That's and there have been actually that I was in a show called Cavalia, which is that show I was telling. It's a branch of Cirque du Soleil, and it's like a show. Like there's dancers and stuff, and there's a screen where it's like there's the conductor, yeah, like giving you signals and stuff. So I was like, same thing, Kareem. I feel I'm getting in the zone. No, like it's almost like Clockwork Orange, where you had to like keep your eyes peeled. So you're right. Depends on the situation, but I like that too, where I can just shut my eyes and just kind of get in the zone. I've seen a lot of other great drummers do that. I know I'm in good company, so I don't think it's a bad thing. But today's theme, so make the bass player happy, and let's get into some tactics for that. So I'm gonna share my screen, and I love this clip just to set the tone for like.
I'll be right.
Yeah, we're here, Kelly. So like the tone of like what it would be, what would a great synergy maybe look like, right? If you could just see just a bass player and a drummer. So this is Billy Ward, who I would consider one of my mentors. I've been following his stuff for a long time. And this is a clip of him and a bass player. Check this out. I love this. I've seen it many hundreds of times. Think of those 4 elements. You can see it happening. So they're just linked up, they're having fun, they're listening to each other, they're vibing, they're grooving, right?
Chris, I'll be back. I gotta plug in my laptop's gonna die.
Yeah, we're here. So any song that you do, one little test that I do on people sometimes is like, can you sing the bass player's part? So that's just like such a good starting point right there. Is like when the song is on, can you kind of cut through? It's almost like you're a detective, like just really listen and try to see if you can just like hear the bass line, right? So everybody's probably heard this song. Let me play a clip of this. See if you can name it. So pretty easy to hear the bass there.
Getting born in the state of Mississippi. Papa
see if you
was a
can-
copper and mama was a hippie. In Alabama,
See if you can hum the bass part to yourself.
When you break the panorama, she never knew that there was anything more than gold. What in the world does your company take me for? Black bandana, sweet Louisiana, robbing on a bank in the state of Indiana. She's a runner, rebel and a stunner, on the merry way saying, baby, what you gonna?
Now it's not that hard to capture it in this song because it's the bass part is prominent, but when the chorus comes and there's a wall of guitar and the singing comes in, sometimes you gotta like hunt a little bit more for like, what is the bass actually doing? And I'll do this little test on people, and I've done this to me. Sometimes like mid-song, you can pause a song and go, oh, great job. I like what you're playing. Sing me the bass part. And sometimes people, do 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 do, and their guess it's like, nope, way off. It's like, listen to it again. Like, oh, and they're kind of hunting more for like, and I sing the actual bass part in the midst of all that's going on, and then it's like, there you go.
Looking down the barrel of a hot metal 45, just another way to survive. California, rest in peace. Simultaneous release. California, show your teeth.
So that's cool. And there's another section of the song. Yeah, this part right here. Now all the vocals and everything going on pulls your ear away. Da, 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 da. But the bass underneath it has such a distinct part. So that's like, can you kind of get your ear on just the bass? So I actually have just the bass track, and let me see if I can find that part. So here's just the bass. So if I find that part that we just heard, that little bridge section. Yeah, right there. By the way, what's really cool is you can actually hear the drums coming in from the wall. If you listen really closely, it's like coming through like his headphones. Yeah, I think it's the bleed of his headphones. If you listen really closely, you can hear the drums. Okay, here's the actual bass line. And you might not get it exact, but and then it's back to that. So that's just, see if you can just sing the bass parts, and that's super essential. Now, does anybody here have a resource that you can play along to bass tracks? Like, put up your hand if you have a resource for that. Okay, so nobody yet. So one is, some people say YouTube sometimes, because on YouTube you could just type in bass only, or like like bass only tracks for drummers or something like that. And sometimes some cool things will come up, and you could save some cool links that you might find. But there's two cool resources I want to share with you today. One is called Turn It Up and Lay It Down. And I think there's like 12 series, and some go into jazz and some go into funk and all kinds of things. So I'll show you a couple examples of that. And one is called Meet the Bass Player, and that's by a great drummer named Alan Cox from the UK. And you can go to his website, just search that, Alan Cox, C-O-X, and you can get it right from the website. And it's called Meet the Bass Player. So we'll do a couple of examples from that. And like, how would we, if we were just jamming with the bass player, how would we like come up with parts? Now, what's fun about this is how slow the tracks start off. So to play along, so Tom, you mentioned like time. If you can really lock in with a super slow bass line without, I know Karima, you said, speeding up. Like, I tend to get excited. I think drummers are all passionate and excited people, right?
Try playing 45 or 50 BPM
Well, funny you say that.
better than 120.
Okay, let's do, so I actually have a track here that is 40 BPM and it's a 12 bar blues, but it's in 40. So I'll just play, yeah, I don't know what I'm going to play actually. I mean, you could play something specific to it, but I'll just kind of jam to it. But this is at 40. So everybody, I'll mute you. You can tap along with it. Okay. Here we go. Ah, excruciatingly slow. So there you go. So Tom, that's 40 BPM. So that's cool you mentioned that. Now there's a great oh Tom, you're muted. Do you have unmute yourself?
How about now? Am I on?
Yeah, you got it.
Okay, I'm pressing the space bar. I don't know about anybody else, but I could barely hear your bass line and your stuff during that. It was like a quarter of the volume of your talking.
I did that on purpose to make it hard. No, I'm just kidding. I'll turn up. I'll make it louder next time. And that has actually happened to me sometimes. You know, on stage. Has that ever happened to anybody here where maybe the bass player, you're like, oh, they're just so quiet. You got to like really like work really hard, or you know, other stuff is noisy and you have to really like focus on that bass extra hard. So yeah, so I'll turn up the bass, but that does happen sometimes. You're absolutely right. So there's a cool clip here. If anybody has seen a great video by Benny Greb, and it's called The Art and Science of Groove. The Art and Science of Groove. And he's got this great clip here where it's just him and the bass player. And the theme is like playing ahead of the beat and behind the beat. And how if you're locked in, it's a good thing if you're both on the same page. But if you're ahead and the bass player's behind, or if you're behind and the bass player's ahead, how it can be not so good. And so I'll just play a couple little spots of this where you can actually see them playing. So I think in this clip, they're both going to play ahead, I'm going to guess. Let's check it out.
You can hear the difference to the first one. It feels more urgent now.
Yeah, so you see that in front, so they're both a little ahead of the beat. By the way,
Now we will pull it back a bit.
Fun fact, bass players will 99% of the time be on the hi-hat side of the drummer. So if you look at any band you like, just type in any of your favorite bands into YouTube, watch them in concert, I'll bet you that the bass player is going to be on the hi-hat side of the drums. Why is that? Because look at his line of sight. LOS, line of sight. He's like, oh, I can literally see his foot on the kick. I know what that bass drum's doing. I'm going to lock in with that kick drum. So bass players will be 99% on the hi-hat side, and you can just see their communication here. So that's in front, and then he demonstrates what if they both laid back. But I like at the end where they purposely, and this must have been fun to film. So he says, okay, you play in front, I'm going to play back. And then they reverse it, like you play in back and I'm going to play in front. And it just feels kind of wrong. Like it just like something's off. So let's check it out.
Version, and Frank will play the early version. Let's go.
And look at the expressions on their faces as they do it. So they're like kind of laughing. They look like, ugh. And I think later they flip it. So it just ends up sounding, yeah, here would be like here's like the reverse of it. By the way, if you could take a vote on which would be worse, what do you think? If the drummer was ahead or behind, what do you think would sound worse?
I think the drummer behind.
Okay, like they're both kind of bad. Okay, you're gonna go with behind. I'm gonna go with ahead because I think because the drummer has so much control over the time. Man, if the drummer's ahead and nobody else is ahead, it's just like, oh man. And that's what they're doing here. And to me, like, I guess they're both bad, Tom. There's no right answer, but yeah, I guess a dragging drummer is not so good either. But man, when the drummer's like ahead of everybody else, it is just not good. So that's this version here. So I like this version because he's kind of saying like, here's purposely what would not be so good. And you can very clearly, you know, and they do it both ways, and you can clearly hear that. So that's yeah, if you can sing that bass line and you can really listen to them, give them that space. And by the way, breathing is really going to be probably the key as you play. Just like if that bass was being played to you right now, boom, boom, boom. If you just boom, 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 and you're listening, you're breathing, probably everything will just click into place. So let's check out a couple other bass lines here. Oh, I really like this one. Okay, now this is from the Turn It Up, Lay It Down series. And I like this one because it has, remember we talked about space? It has a big space as like training. So I'll show you what I mean. So I think it's this one. Let me crank that bass up for you, Tom. Everybody hear that thumbs up? So this is a slow bass line. Now let's actually come up with a part for that right now, and everybody can do this. Yeah, come up with a part for it right now, and we'll talk about maybe how to do that. But there's another version of this track where it's the same bass line, but then the bass stops for 2 whole bars, which is going to seem like an eternity. So do 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 do. do, then it comes back in and it's like, oh man. And if you just keep grooving or you do a fill, when you come in with that crash cymbal, you better hope that, well, don't hope. Hope is not a strategy, but you want it like bo, bo, bo. You want both of you to be locked in. And that's why they purposely made that track to test your time to see if you rush. So I'll do that in a second, but let's come up with a part to play with this bass line right now. Now, there's 3 ways to come up with a part. And I'll demonstrate all 3 ways, and I'm going to mute everybody here. And I want everybody to come up with your own parts. Now, one part is, so the first way is mimic. So mimic. So do, do, do. Do, 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 do. Do, 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 do. Now you could, a good place to start is just with the feet, which is cool. Like maybe, it depends what level you're at in your drumming, if you're able to do this with the coordination, but you could just keep time with the left foot. Actually, let me play the bass with that. And I'm literally just going to mimic the bass line with my foot. So I'm just keeping time. So I don't have it exact, but I'm pretty close. Boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, boom, boom. Boom, 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 boom. Or boom, 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 boom. You don't have to get it exact, but pretty close. And you may not have, if you don't have the coordination to keep time with one foot and play with the other, just get it ballpark. Like even if you're just like, ba, 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 or even leave out the left foot. Da, da, da. Do, 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 do. Just even if you get some of the notes, you're there. So that's called mimic, right? You're just literally parroting what you're hearing. You're hearing it and you're playing it back. So if I just keep that going, add a beat over it. So dum 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 dum. And if you have the ability in your drumming yet to add little flavors, that's cool. If not, just keep it real simple. It could be like do 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 do. Even no matter what level you're at, like just try to mimic that bass line. Okay, so that's the first way, mimic. So let me just jam with that. So that might look like this. So I'm trying to go as much with it as I can. And there's one little note. So if I were practicing this, it's like there's one little note. Do, 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 beep, boot. It's just like, oh, I'm going to catch that. So I'm in the kind of mimicking mindset, right? Like I'm going to get every little note you're doing. Now, the second way is called cherry picking, where you're just like, I'm just going to choose a little bit to go with you, but I'm going to do my own thing, basically, in the gaps, right? So that might look like I'm just playing time. I'm just gonna hit one note. Just to catch one little piece of it. So I'm just like picking and choosing like what little piece to do. So that might look like this. So I'm playing all my own. I'm just going, if you're familiar with the go around grooves, I'm just playing some like doom da a doom doom da doom da doom da doom da. And just hit one note wherever I choose to go with them. So yeah, I'm just picking and choosing like one little part. So first part mimic, second part cherry picking, and third part counter. And actually, this is kind of my favorite right here, is like, what if you purposely pick like a totally different counter rhythm that's not what they're doing? In a band like the Police would kind of do this, where each person has like their own part. So I'm gonna purposely pick something that's not what the bass player is doing. So I'm trying to, it's challenging actually, because sometimes we'd be going together and I'd be like, oh no, I'm trying to pick notes that the bass isn't on. So sometimes that can be kind of fun, just to like play in the gaps and to see, where you can come up with something different. So I think the first groove I played, so almost like a Motown groove or something, very different than what the bass player is doing there. So we're purposely playing like different parts that are gonna hopefully sound cool together, but they don't always sound cool together. So it depends on the situation, depends on kind of what the music calls for. And yeah, so that's the 3 ways. And then usually within that, it's experimenting and just seeing what feels good, what feels good to the bass player, and yeah, just going from there and coming up with a cool part. And a lot of times, by the way, one of my favorite things to do is just steal something from a totally other song. Maybe there's like a groove you've heard and you're like, so does anybody know 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover? That just jumped into my head. I wonder. So that goes like, I wonder what that would sound like. So 50 Ways to Leave Your Lover goes. By the great Steve Gadd. It's a very different type of groove. So like, I wonder what that would sound like with this. Might work, it might not. Let's find out. So kind of odd, but kind of interesting. And it might launch me into playing something, I don't know, like hitting those toms there was kind of cool. And I'm not playing a backbeat. It's just a very different type of groove. So like maybe totally stealing, you know, like what if I just use this other beat I learned and fly it in here and see what happens? That's how a lot of great parts were created. And I've you know, don't reinvent the wheel. You don't, like everything is stolen from something else. Mozart said once, I've never tried to create anything original in my life. I just studied the masters and did my thing, but he didn't try to be original. He just like, let me just like make up something that feels good in the moment. And yeah, he studied the masters and just did his thing. And that was Mozart. So that's one of my favorite things to do, just fly in a part, right? So cool. So let's end today with that version of it that I mentioned leaves that space. So this one is the same bass line, but with 2 bars of space. So let's see what happens. So I'll groove through it and then maybe put some fills in there. So I know I'm gonna be ahead of it. And I had to pull back a little bit, and I still was like a little bit ahead of it. So that's a good thing to practice. And that track is right there for you to just like leave that space and see if you can be bang
That was
on.
from Turn It Up, Lay It Down.
That's from Turn It Up, Lay It Down. Yeah, highly recommend. It's literally for drummers to train to. And there's just so many great tracks. And the other one was Meet the Bass Player. And these were made specifically for drummers. And I've got there's a great bass player I play with named Ian D'Souza, and he's made me sometimes he's got some, you know, tracks that he's like, hey, check this out. Do you want to play along with this? And they're great for me to practice to. So any like bass only tracks, you know, we heard that Flea one, you know, Danny California. So check that out. Yeah, so if I go to, here's one that I like too. This is from I think it's this one. So Meet the Bass Player. And this is a little faster. So one thing that sometimes simplicity is just the perfect thing to do. So what if you're playing like Go Around Groove 1 with this? So just playing something sometimes like simple, but you notice with that attitude, you gotta own it. You definitely gotta own it. Yeah. Exactly, Tom. Yeah. So that's how Meet the Bass Player. Second one. So you can just exactly see I get in the flow, and that's fantastic. So cool. So to end today, does anybody have any questions about that or anything we covered today? Yeah, Karima.
When you're playing, like when you're playing on stage, can you, in your headphones, can you hear the bass player? Or
I
do you
definitely
hear
want
it,
to.
or how does that work?
If hopefully you have some control over that. And yeah, like the more, the ideal situation is they're like, okay, Karima, what would you like in your headphones? Or sometimes you have a little mixing board and you can control that. So I have, some people in the LTR drumming community, and they just invest in like their own little kind of system so they can control the sound. And they're great drummers like Dave Weckl, Simon Phillips, that they know the electronics and the mixing of the sound, so they can control exactly what they hear in your monitors.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, but that being said, there are situations where you have no control and like stuff is just, or
You can kind of tell by the body language, and then you can watch their fingers too, and like, there's
yeah.
and
Some of it's that's a good question. Some of it's faith and just trust. Sometimes, like I heard Jojo Mayer tell this story. Like if you see him, you could search and find the video for the 2008. I think it's the 2008 Modern Drummer Festival, and he's playing with his band. And I think he'd said, sound check, everything was cool. They ask you like, okay, what would you like in your headphones? And you kind of try a little more of this, a little less of that. Great, we got it perfect. Isn't that what a sound check is for? Yes, that's what a sound check is supposed to be doing, right? And then I think he said when they actually played, it was just like, why do we even bother doing sound check? It was just like a totally different, like unplayable. So he had to actually pop his in-ear out. And I think the keyboardist didn't know, or maybe it was the bass player, one of them didn't know that he was like flying blind. It was all eye contact. He's like, just keep going, man. So they didn't know that he couldn't hear them. He just he's like, this is so bad, I just have to pop it out of my ear. And he could only hear himself.
Wow.
He just had to be like, just let's get through it, man. Like keep it cool. So if you watch the video, it's like nothing, you never know anything was going on. But I've heard him tell that. It's like, yeah, when we did that, the sound was so bad. I just had to, just kind of, you ever driven in like a snowstorm and you're just like, okay, I'm just going to watch those headlights ahead of me. And I'm just going to
hope for the best.
Yeah. Like I cannot see the road, but I'm just going to follow those lights and just hope I don't crash. That was kind of what happened.
Years ago too, we didn't have monitors or any of that, man. I mean,
yeah,
you were there. Hopefully, that you had the amps far enough behind you so that you were able to hear it too. But
you're just making music.
At least now, sometimes they'll point them. If you're playing with a good band, they'll point a monitor towards you. So, I can hear these guys.
Yeah, exactly. But I've been through sometimes the snare is so cranked, it's like, or there's so much treble on it or something, it's distracting you. Or this, all of a sudden the singer's way louder than they were at sound check. And you're like, whoa, I can't even hear the bass. So that's why all this work we did today, like, okay, I'm going to concentrate on my time. I'm going to leave space, focus on my dynamics, listen, know my parts, focus on my breathing, practice with bass tracks. And then if you're in a situation like that, you'll be like, okay, cool, I can get through it. No problem. just like Jojo Mayer did, instead of crumble and have a train wreck, which isn't good. And that's very, I've had a few of those too. And that's challenging, but great question. So, you know, they say, like the Spartans say, try harder in practice, like bleed less in war. You know, like so have your practice ready together, and then when you're in the war, it's like, okay, less bad things will happen.
Come back victorious, or come back on your snare drum head.
Yeah, I like that. Excellent. So amazing seeing everybody today, and that was awesome. And it's really like our best friend is the bass player, and by the way, bass players practice. You know, they say, wow, our best friend in the band is the drummer, and they do all the same stuff. You know, they practice with drum machines, and bass players go to a lot of work to lock in with us. So we need to definitely return that favor and just create this just cool energy. You know, I was in a band once, and I used to ask, it was extra work, but I like being in bands that they want to do the extra work. And his name was Brett, and well, I've done this in almost every band I've been in, but I'm like, hey Brett, like, do you want to go over the rehearsal, but like just me and you? And he's like, sure, you know, and we would meet on nights not with the band, and we would just do our own rehearsal. Like, we literally just go through the set, just bass and drums. We didn't need the singer, we didn't need, you know, the guitar to know where we were. We just made sure we were good, and oh, I didn't know you were doing that before. Let me leave you more space, and we just really got ourselves solid. It was so much fun. So yeah, so awesome. Keep drumming, keep having fun, and everybody here is amazing. Keep it going. Stay inspired. I'll see you soon. Okay.
Really good. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Tom. Thanks, Kelly. Bye, Karima.
Bye.